Well, hello and welcome to The Chat. Today we're here to talk about self-sabotage. Is it you or is it the system? Meaning the company you work for, the people you surround yourself with. I'm Wendy Comodina and thank you for joining us today. So before we get into the episode, I want you to have a little bit of a think about just what happens in your day-to-day life. You know you work hard, you know you show up, you know that you're pushing through a bunch of deadlines and pressure, but how does that sit outside of the workplace? So let me be a little bit clearer. When I think about the deadlines, the pressure that I've been under, and then not even counting the after hours drinks that I've been invited to, the quick networking catch-ups where I feel almost obligated to show up, because if I don't show up, I worry, I get FOMO, and secondly, I worry, is this going to impact my relationships with the people who are attending the after hours drinks? Does that mean I'm not building relationships and networking and moving myself forward? So you tend to just show up because you feel like it's the right thing to do. But in the back end, your body is telling you something different. And I know this because everyone kept saying to me, Wendy, you need to slow down. You need to slow down. And of course, I didn't. So I was running on empty. I wasn't sleeping a lot. I think at one point I was sleeping about 4 hours a night. And the stress was starting to show up on my body and in my face. In fact, I had a colleague say to me, oh, Wendy, you don't look good. You look so tired. And it was the inflammation in my face, in my eyes, the exhaustion. I was eating my exhaustion. So of course I would snack on chips in the middle of the night, chocolate binges, and just really not looking after myself and thinking that I am resilient. So I know this is you. I know that perhaps you're one of those amazing people that have got it all together. I'm not. I've walked in those shoes before, and I've invited a very special guest today. Her name is Aroney. She's a nutritionist and the founder of ExecFuel. Now, the reason I've invited Karen is I really am excited to hear about her story. She used to be a corporate high flyer herself, so she sat in my shoes and your shoes before, but then she went and transformed her career. So now as a nutritionist, she helps executives or people in the corporate world focus on how to actually coach themselves or improve their wellness and their health from the inside out to help them perform. Because when you're not doing that, what you're doing is you're sabotaging your own ability to perform in the workplace. So without further ado, welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you don't mind, maybe do a quick intro of yourself and why this topic is super important to you.
So excited to be here having this conversation with you today, because honestly, that experience you just described, showing up, doing everything right and still feeling like you're being held back, that was me for many, many years. So yes, I do come from a corporate background. I did work in high performance environments, lots of pressure, managed teams, held leadership roles, and I always felt like I was pushing hard, often at the expense of my own health. And on the surface, it looked like I was thriving, as I'm sure it did for many of us. But behind the scenes, I was constantly second-guessing myself, navigating the politics I didn't fully understand, and quietly just burning out. So at the time, it wasn't something I could see clearly. And I think that will resonate with a lot of the listeners today. I think maybe there were times when I thought I was the problem. I wasn't doing enough, or I wasn't doing the right stuff. And looking back, now that I'm in this position, I do understand that it's a mix of self-sabotage and subtle external sabotage that was at play. And it was costing me not just my career, but also my well-being. And so now I work with high-achieving professionals, both men and women, to help them break out of that particular cycle. It's a very specific cycle, and one that is a cycle you can't really identify at first. And so I bring together psychology, nutrition, and performance strategies to help people rebuild from the inside out, essentially, and recognize the patterns that quietly derail them. So hopefully this will be helpful for listeners, because the conversation is important, because whether you're in it or whether you're stuck in that type of fog, you don't often realize how much it's actually affecting you till you come out of it. Yeah. And I do want to unpack it or share a few raw stories if we can, and hopefully offer that practical advice so that we move forward with it. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Karen, before we go into the stories, it's probably quite helpful for the listeners just to get an understanding of what type of corporate job you had. So, like what type of pressure you were under, just so that the listeners can resonate with you, to help them understand the environment you were in versus where you are now.
Yep, absolutely. So I worked in sales, senior management in sales, and executive management. And we all know, well, any of the listeners that can resonate all know what the sales environment is like. I also grew up in male-dominated environments. So I was in telco for most of my professional life.
Yeah.
And I started young. I think I started in corporate when I was 23, I want to say. And so over 20 years of that really took its toll. And I think, for listeners out there who aren't in sales environments or male dominated environments, it's not that much different, right? Because we are still expected to perform. There's KPIs to meet. There's the politics we have to navigate. There's the proficiency we need to uphold even when we're feeling exhausted and not trusting of anyone around us, not trusting of ourselves. So that's essentially where I sort of came from, the boys' club, to having to work around that and to really see my own health taking a toll as a result of being influenced by that, but also having to perform in these high-pressure environments. Yep.
So, you just mentioned something that triggered me. You said the boys' club, and women talk about the boys' club, not a lot, but it does happen. And in fact, one of the guest speakers we have coming up on the chat in a future episode is really interested in unpacking the topic of the middle-aged white man. So that's another topic for another day. But I do actually see and speak to men who are also impacted. So I think women are much better at talking to each other about it, but I do have examples of men who've come to me and said, hey, look, I'm also struggling with, people taking credit for my work, for, being excluded, passive aggressive behavior, some of the things that happen, and sabotage, it's either self-sabotage or sabotage your ability to move forward. Can you just kind of unpack that a little bit? Talk us through.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting in that environment because both men and women, there are specific men and women out there, and specific men out there, particularly who are empaths. And I see them all the time in my work, who come to me as a result of having been negatively influenced or impacted negatively by their particular career and their environment. And that's led to things like self-sabotage around eating habits or lack of sleep or, and these are things that, really are within your own control, but they have lost control of that. And a high empath male in these environments can feel just as threatened or as insecure as a female in these environments. And there's nothing wrong with being high empath. It's more around learning and strategizing around your boundaries and what you will and won't accept. And that's often very difficult to do because we are socialized, especially our generation when we were growing up in that environment, to feel threatened that we were going to lose our role or our job, or if we did speak up or if we did set particular boundaries. So I do absolutely see that with male colleagues, with male clients, with male friends as well.
Yeah. So let's kind of transition back to, I guess, the core topic today is around, sabotage. And the thing that I was really excited to hear about from you is, what was that pivotal point or that moment where you just thought, you know what, Like what was the thing that happened that resulted in you transitioning and transforming your career from corporate
Mm,
into wellness? Um,
mm.
help me understand, was there a trigger, or was there an incident, or was it a series of different things that in combination kind of they built up, resulting
Yep.
in making a transformation in yourself?
Yes, absolutely. There were a couple of things. So it was more of a build up. So I
Mm,
think the things that I was experiencing, I was also seeing in my colleagues, which was,
mm,
you would be thrown a project and a ridiculous deadline. For example, I do remember back in the early days when I was at that sort of cornerstone of, progressing from just, early sales into sort of that middle management area at a young age, and having a manager who came up to me and said, "Okay, so I need this done by 8, and I want to have a meeting done by 8 a.m. the next morning." And this was 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
I shouldn't
Now
laugh,
this,
but
well, I say it because
I've
you
been
can
in those
resonate.
shoes.
Oh, so many times. And I think
Yeah.
back then I was too young and too unaware to say no, right?
Mm,
Or say that is ridiculous. The numbers I need to pull and work on, that's going to take me a week to do,
yeah.
really, from the different suppliers, the vendors, all that sort of thing. And so that happened a lot. And that particular moment was probably one of my most aha moments, because I noticed that it wasn't just occurring with me, it was occurring with others. And what I started seeing over the years was fatigue, fluctuating weight, particularly weight gain, low mood or depression,
Wow.
anxiety, insecurities, relationship breakups,
Mm,
and really unfit, really unfit. And it was happening to me too. I was putting on the weight. I was
mm,
losing my fitness because I didn't have time to exercise, and I love training.
yeah.
I was constantly dragged to meetings, drinks, events, things that weren't necessarily congruent with my lifestyle.
Mm,
And then I think what triggered it the most was when I finally decided it was over. I had set up a system for myself where I had spent the last few years in corporate actually regaining my strength, my energy, my body composition was on point again. And I did things in a way that was very different to how my colleagues were doing things. So I could give another example. I'm at a conference in the US. I get up at, say, I think at the time it was 5 a.m. Before the conference starts, I hit the gym. I then have my protein shake. I bring my own snacks, that sort of thing. And I was getting a lot of questions and comments. Oh, you're at the gym early, or why aren't you coming out tonight? Why aren't you staying for that extra
mm,
drink? Why aren't you eating that? Why aren't you having that? And I really received, and still in different ways, received a lot of judgment from colleagues around why I was doing things differently, i.e., in a more healthy and self-preserving way, as opposed to the self-sabotage that I was seeing. And that was probably more my catalyst eventually to go, I don't even need to answer these questions anymore. And in fact, you should probably be working with me to get your own health up to speed. So I ended up leaving that and opening up my consultancy.
mm,
I am a registered nutritionist and psychologist. And so for me, it was a bit of a no-brainer to go, I really need to just help people like that
mm,
transform out of this mindset and this behavior. So it was
yeah.
really my own sabotage that made me wake up to it, and
Mm,
then watching others in the same spot. And I still see ex-colleagues of mine, whether it's on social, whether it's in person, and I see what happens after 20, 30 years of doing the same thing. And I'm adamant that I don't want to age in that way. This is a longevity
wow.
play.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point. You've triggered a few things in your thoughts. So I want to share with you an example of something similar where I
Yeah.
was working in an organization that had a male leadership team, and I was the only female leader in that team. And they had a routine where every Thursday after work. And this was before the work from home was a thing. So
Yeah.
giving away my my time in the industry. But
Yeah.
but look, the work from home thing wasn't a thing. So every day we would be in the office, and every Thursday we'd all drop, down tools at about 4 p.m. and the leadership team would go downstairs for beer and a couple of drinks. Now, number one, I'm not a beer drinker. And secondly, I drove to work. So I could only really have one drink unless I was going to be drink driving. But the thing that I didn't realize at the time, Karen, and probably yourself in that moment, but then fast forward now, you looking at your clients that come to you, for your support at ExecFuel, is that you actually don't realize you're self-sabotaging, because I only did it because I had FOMO, or I was worried that I was not going to be respected in that leadership team. So I thought, I'm not going to show up. If I don't show up to the drinks, then I'm not going to be included in the conversations. I won't be part of the fun team. But at the same time, I'm sabotaging my own wellness and my health, and I feel rubbish. I'm sure you have clients that come to you like that all the time.
All the time. I love that example. I mean, it happened to me a lot. And I would find myself in a position saying, I've just come from an evening run, which I never used to do. I used to run when I was younger, particularly in the evenings, and I'd have to go to a bar to meet with the senior management because I didn't want to do the same thing. And I remember sitting there with a glass of wine in front of me thinking, I don't want this. I feel sick. Why am I even here? And so those reflective moments are so pivotal, because there has to, when clients come to see me with similar concerns, it's not so much a lack of nutritional understanding. It is to some degree, because if I told you what's really happening when you have those drinks, in excess, and you don't even want them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a drink from my perspective, but everyone's got their opinion. But if I told you physically what's happening, you would probably stop. But if I tell you mentally what's really happening, that will probably drive you more. I mean, you're putting yourself in a position of self-sabotage, yes, but what it does, it has a knock-on effect for how you do everything. So if you are willing to compromise yourself at that moment, then you are willing to compromise yourself at other moments in that career. And especially when I see men doing this and approaching me because they are feeling incredibly unhealthy mentally and physically as a result of continuously having these moments. One of the things that we really work on is mindset, because the work that I do is embedded in 3 pillars. It's around nutrition, mindset, and lifestyle integration. And if you don't have all 3 pillars aligned, you will not succeed at any of them. Okay. You might be great at handling your nutrition, but your mindset's not there, which means you can't integrate it into your lifestyle. Or you may have your mindset there, but your nutrition's a little bit off whack. And again, you can't integrate that into your lifestyle. So it's a really interesting play on what you're willing to accept and work on and then move forward with.
Yeah. So I guess so let's go back a little bit so we don't lose the flow on of your journey. So your journey, just to kind of recap on some of the things that I've learned from you, is that you have experienced the high pressure corporate life. Having a hardcore sales job in telco meant that you would have had some tough targets that you would have had to attain, deadlines, all the things that many of our listeners have got. You yourself felt like you were self-sabotaging because you were invited to things that, to be honest, weren't they weren't helping you be sharp and, I guess, what's the word, like, what's the opposite of brain
fog? Not in alignment.
What's the opposite of brain fog? Clarity. There we go. Clarity. So maybe I need this.
That's all right.
But clarity. So you didn't have those things, and then you transformed your entire career into this wellness world. So now that you're on this other side, you're looking back at your past self and the past colleagues. What are some of the toughest things or the things, maybe the themes of people who come to you Are there themes or
Yes.
things that you can share with us that help us understand, am I sitting in that seat? Am I sabotaging my own wellness and preventing me from performing in my job?
100%. Okay, so there are sort of a few key indicators that you are in this position. The first one is around that need for perfectionism and the constant second guessing of yourself. If you are, with my clients, if they are perfectionists and they're second guessing, they are usually then high anxiety, feeling like they haven't made it, always striving for more and burning themselves out as a result. So that's absolutely one where it comes with, because they are all high achievers. And I think that that's partly due to the fact that that's the clientele that I work with. But the other part of it is the physical. It's the lack of sleep or poor sleep, whether there's lack of sleep because of stress or deadlines, or it's poor sleep because of sleep apnea, because of weight gain. Lots of sleep apnea situations. There's the emotional eating aspect, which is huge. In fact, I would say 90% of the people that I work with, whether they realize it or not, emotionally eat. And that is, it's very normal, very normal. We eat for so many other reasons than hunger. This might resonate with some listeners. Boredom is the key one. Mental stress or anxiety is another one. We eat because we're socialized to eat at certain times, or we may be, I have clients who are traveling 80% of the time and they have to entertain. So we eating emotionally there. They're not even hungry. Yes.
Are you describing me? You're describing This is not good.
It is good. It is good because it just highlights it, brings it up to the world. So, and inflammation is another one. Inflammation for all of us, and whether we again identify it or not. So those are sort of the mental and the physical things I see. What I see on a more professional level from my professionals is they have turned inward a lot. So they've stopped speaking up. They have started to play small. They're avoiding taking risks. Now, this is a huge one because they've avoided taking risks. It also meant that they have their boundaries have come down on themselves and what they allow. And so what that's also meant for all of almost all of the people that I work with, there are some that are not in this category at all, but they're just not going for the roles or the promotions that they deserve to go for. And that's impacting their mental state and, again, the physical state. So
I feel like that there's a connection with confidence here, because I just want to put myself into some of the examples that you provide. I'm going to tell you a funny story to provide the example. Lovely guy in the office who is someone I respect and honestly genuinely like. And a couple of times when I didn't have enough sleep, and I was emotionally eating or out or traveling a lot for work, I had inflammation in my face, and I didn't realize it at the time, but my eyelids were puffy, and I suppose that's one of the many signs that you see. And he said to me, "Oh, well, you don't look very good today. You look very tired." But what that does is, lucky I take negative feedback quite well, and I had a bit of a giggle. But in the back of my mind, I thought, I don't look good, so therefore I don't feel good, therefore I'm less confident in that next presentation, or maybe I can't remember if in that moment there was something important about to happen. But if I was told that just before I'm about to get on stage and present, I probably would have had less confidence. So I can definitely see the connection between what you're seeing from your clients and then the output, like the outcome.
This is exactly why I do what I do, and you've nailed it. So we've sort of come full circle with this particular point. And I love that you gave yourself as an example. One of the things that I'm adamant about with my clients is that looking and feeling amazing is not separate from doing amazing work. Okay. So it is really important to understand that you will become better at what you do. Your output will increase because your confidence will increase, and your confidence will only increase if it comes from within. And whether that is physical part of it, right, having the right diet, exercising, sleeping, or whether that's the mental or both, once you have the confidence, your results are better. And because I work with people who are results orientated, who are in high pressure environments, who are senior, they need and want those results. And so my work is absolutely embedded in ensuring that they are physically ready to achieve those results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. So again, I so easily put myself into many of the examples you provided, and hopefully, well, maybe not hopefully, but hopefully some of the listeners can hear a pattern of, actually, that's me. So if, for example, they wanted some help in that space, how like, what are some of the things that you do at ExecFuel? How do you help your clients? Like, do you give them a scheduled, like, go for a run on the beach and eat apples and bananas all day long? Or is, like, what's your what's your framework to help people get well, mentally and physically well, so they can perform in their jobs?
Yeah, great question. I wish it was as easy as eat apples and bananas and then go for a run on the beach.
As long as there's coffee involved.
There's always coffee involved. I can't live without it, only because it's a habit that I love. But this then leads me on to a few things. So it's with those three pillars, that's what we really focus on. So the first one is nutrition. What I do encourage clients to do first and foremost, though, is I ask them to understand what their why is. So when people come to see me, I say, what is your why for wanting to get healthy? And what does healthy mean to you? What is your why? Because if it doesn't resonate with you, you will never stay motivated. And it has to really work for you. So it can't be a why that you feel will please someone else. It can't be a why that you think sounds good to me. It has to be a why that really sits with you. So that's key. Then we work on the goals for nutrition, psychology, and lifestyle integration. And one of the goals that I do really focus on with nutrition, for example, is creating a bit of an audit onto what you eat. So it's really important. First and foremost, even if you were to have a conversation with me, I would get you to audit what you eat in a day for about 7 days. We usually call this a food diary. You can call it whatever you like, but it's basically a journaling of what you're eating, so that we have an understanding of what that looks like. Because we've got another vision in our heads about what that looks like.
I would love to see what some of your clients are auditing. It's like Mars bar,
amazing.
coffee, then a glass of red wine. It's like, no wonder you don't feel great.
Well, it's not too far off, but we do get to a point where once we see it, I can then help you build some consistency and some habits around what to eat and how. And so one of the things I really do recommend is, if you're somebody who is really unsure of where to start, when it comes to nutrition, I really encourage you to look at what you eat, what the first thing of the day is that you eat. Okay, so whether you call this breakfast, lunch, brunch, whatever, I don't mind. But your day really starts with what you eat, the first thing you eat, because that first thing you eat sets the tone for your hormones, your blood sugar levels, your brain power for the rest of the day, and your habits for the rest of the day. Wow. So it really encompasses so much more than just eat your breakfast. And then what I try and encourage them to do is we really work on consistency. So it doesn't have to be something big. So, for example, I'm a huge advocate of habit stacking. Have you heard of habit stacking, Wendy?
No.
So habit stacking is a practice where you have an existing healthy habit or a habit that is, not self-sabotaging, and then you add a smaller, healthier habit on top. So, for example, so that we can build more habits onto it that are easy to do and better for you. So, for example, if you're somebody that makes their coffee at home first thing in the morning, and you're not usually a breakfast eater, but you're a little bit hungry and you should probably be eating something, then a habit stack would be that you make your coffee and at the same time you prep a really light breakfast or breakfast to go. So that's a really easy habit stack right there.
I see.
if I say to you, Wendy, I'm going to need you to eat more protein, I'm going to show exactly how much protein you need for your body to change your body composition, to increase your energy, to create lean muscle, then I will say to you, this is what lunch looks like for you. You're going to add X amount of protein in this form to that lunch. So there's another habit that you've created right there. So sort of habit stacking there. And what it allows is for you to not have decision fatigue as well. So once we develop these habits, we can erase decision fatigue from you. Instead of guessing what you need to do, you've sort of created an automated system for you, right? And those are the things we sort of focus on first when it comes to nutrition and psychology. And you can see that that will then integrate into your lifestyle. If I was to say to you, as a person who's never eaten breakfast, as an example, I want you to make, scrambled eggs with avocado on the side, fried up mushrooms. You're going to look at me and say, I'm never seeing you again, Karen, because it's something that I've never had the time for. I'm not going to cook, all those sorts of things. So it really has to fit into your lifestyle as well.
And to be honest,
that's how we started.
Sorry to interrupt that
No,
last
go
bit.
on.
I was going to say that's probably why a lot of people who are unguided, and what I mean by unguided is, it's so easy to kind of jump on the internet and watch a YouTube or follow an Instagram person and go, oh, wow, they're having this for breakfast and I'm just going to follow that. And then suddenly I'm going to be on the right path. But I think the key that I'm hearing here is that it has to be customized, because if you said to me, Wendy, you need to have avo on toast with mushrooms every morning, I could probably do it on a weekend, maybe on a Sunday, because Sunday I have a sleep in, I've got a bit more time and I can be bothered. But on, Monday to Friday, it's routine, walk the dog, kids to school, get dressed, you got like stuff. It's like, I just want something fast. So the Instagram and the YouTube influencers have got great ideas, but they don't work for most people. So I love how you can actually help support your clients in a customized way. That I mean, I've actually met a lot of people who've got gluten intolerances and nut allergies and whatever. And so for myself, I'm actually lactose intolerant, and so a lot of the times I still eat a little bit of lactose. That's getting a bit personal, but I find that when I've tried to take something that is not customized to me off the shelf, I always have to adjust because you've got too much cheese or milk or whatever, and it's just, I can't be bothered. I give up and I just go back to my old routine. So it's the customization, obviously, is something that is critical to
because
getting the right outcome.
Oh, exactly. It's it has to be premium and it has to be customized. You're so right around your own experience with even just that lactose intolerance. If you start a new routine and you don't have someone in your space coaching you, and I mean, essentially it's coaching. We have specialists for everything else, but as corporate athletes, which is what I love to call everyone in the corporate space, well, you don't have, athletes have a nutritionist, they have a sleep therapist, they have scheduled off season. We don't get scheduled off season, really. They have such a huge support, they're physiotherapists, they have such a huge support system to make sure that they are getting that result. Unlike the corporate athlete who's still expected to perform, we're still the 1%ers, but we don't have someone to help us sleep. We don't have someone to clean up around us. We don't have, some of us don't. We don't have private chefs. Some of us do, which is great. Those clients are fun, but
I said few of us do.
A very small percentage of us do. But when I'm working with these corporate athletes, they don't get that same treatment, and they come and see me and they say, I don't know why I've never understood nutrition. It seems so basic. I should know it. And I said, I say this openly and honestly, I do this full time. Okay. I do this full time. I can't do your job full time. So why do you expect to be able to do my job full time?
That's
so
true.
This is why a specialist is important if you're serious about results. Yeah. That's the I suppose the discussion that we have that's quite honest.
It makes me think about, again, you've triggered another thought, which is, I see a lot of coaches on LinkedIn and people who are positioning themselves to help support others in their career, leadership coaches. But I don't see, in fact, I think you're the first person I've met who is actually looking at the actual well-being that creates performance. Because even if you have somebody coaching you on your performance delivery, how you present, how you build a strategy, if you're feeling like rubbish on the inside and you're not sleeping, you've got inflammation, and you're surrounded by a toxic workplace or people, it's no matter how much coaching you get, if you don't address the health part, then you're not really addressing the whole person. So anyway, look,
So true.
yeah, I never thought about it until you just said it. So look, so looking back, just to help us wrap up, what are some of the lessons learned? If you could go back in time to your corporate self, transforming before you even transform, like what would you tell the listeners who are potentially thinking about where they're sitting in their life and in their career? What lessons have you learned that you think, you know what, I wish I'd known that, but now I can pay that forward by helping somebody else recognize the patterns and doing something about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we don't get to say it often enough. I don't get to highlight it in such a direct manner, which I love. So my number one is stop normalizing depletion. It's not a badge of honor to be exhausted. In fact, what it does is it puts you on the back foot for not being able to invest in your energy, and energy is what will get you there. So, if you are exhausted and depleted, do something about that, because your lack of energy will see to it that you are making mistakes, you're not showing up, you're not confident. So, and then I move on to the second point, which is invest in your energy. So if you can see that you don't have energy, invest in creating space for energy. Because like you said, you can have all the coaching in the world, but if you don't have the energy, it's not going to last and it's not going to work. So energy, I when I work with high performers who are very strategic and who have nailed it with me and the work that we do, they develop a strategy for energy. So you've got a strategy for everything you do in your workplace. Why don't we have a strategy for energy and nutrition? I don't know. For a lot of people.
Yeah.
So invest in your energy like you would all your other skills, your food, your mindset, your movement, the rest, and rest. Like it's non-negotiable for me, and you need to make it non-negotiable. Now, I know that is easier than it sounds. Like, well, it sounds a bit easy, or it sounds simple, sorry, but it's not easy. So we really need to take that time to go, right, where am I normalizing depletion? Where am I exhausted? And why is this happening? And then where can I invest in my energy now? And those are the sort of things that we really need to pay attention to.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really do hope that the listeners take this information and reflect on where they're at and do something about it. I have to say I've made a lot of the mistakes that you talked through, and I haven't done a good job myself. So it's definitely something that I'm sure I'm not the only person. So just to wrap up, if anybody else wants to reach out to you, learn a little bit more about ExecFuel, how do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can just go to the website, which is execfuel.com.au. You can book a call with me there, or you can join the mailing list where I regularly blog or send some newsletters out with a bit of information. And I also do have a nice little guide at the moment that is free, which is 3 steps to building a high performance nutrition plan without guesswork. And that is exactly what it is. So it's not a specific 7-day-a-week meal plan and these are your recipes. It is more a guide on what you need to think about if you want to start making some serious changes around your own nutrition plan. So not just meal planning, but what does nutrition look like for you in terms of your lifestyle? So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, fantastic. I'll put all of that up in the show notes. So that
Great, thank
any of the
you.
listeners can go and download the 3-step guide, or go onto your website, send you an email and schedule a meeting. So thank you so much again, Karen. I really appreciate your time today. I've definitely learned a lot. So I hope that the listeners learned something for themselves, took something away.
Thank
And
you.
congratulations on making the transformation from corporate into the world of nutrition and wellness. It's definitely a beautiful niche that a lot of people could benefit from. So thank you
Oh,
again.
thank you.
And
Oh, thank you, Wendy.
yeah, join us in our next episode on the chat. Bye. Cry.